Hey guys, so this week is a Copic drawing of my characters Yako and Amaret. And you probably recognize these characters. I drew them a couple months ago, but this was before they were really OCs. I actually didn't intend them to become OCs, but they did. And I love them so much. And like, if you've seen like my sketchbooks, you know that they just like completely took them over, like the last at least like the last one and the one before that. Yeah, so I was just sort of I was sitting down and I was trying to think of some finished pieces to do, which is normally how I do things. I'm not saying it's like the best way to do it, but I'll normally just like set aside some time to specifically like just brainstorm and think of ideas to draw. And normally I come out with like a couple of things, and I just kind of run through those ideas, and then whenever I run out, I think of some more. And that also means sometimes I end up a little bit like stuck whenever I run out of ideas, but yeah. So, I used red lines to line this piece, and I was tempted to go with either colored pencils or brown lines, which brown lines are kind of like my go-to lines. But I went with red because red just seems to go very well whenever I use it in a piece that has a lot of white. And I think it's just because it adds just a bit of extra color and it stands out from a lot of the blue in the background, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I don't know if it just adds like some extra warmth to the piece, but it just, I don't know, I normally end up like how it goes whenever I use red lines on like either winter pieces or something that has generally a lot of white. Like I did that on my journey piece. Yako's skin was really difficult because I actually didn't remember what colors I used whenever I did the drawing of him like as a kid catching the frogs. And it didn't turn out bad in the end, I think, but whenever I was doing it, I was like, oh goodness, was this really a good idea? And because his skin is like almost the same value as the lines, it was kind of easy for like the details of his face to kind of get lost because like just the red lines were not showing up as well on him as they were on everything else. And yeah, like I said, I don't think it actually ended up turning out bad, but it worried me whenever I was doing it. I did like reinforce the red lines afterward, plus I ended up doing his eyebrows in the right color. I left them red here, and then I was like, no. This looks weird. So obviously just the idea here is that like they either fell or they just willingly rolled down this hill for fun and frolicking couples or whatever. And I was like, well, if it's kind of like that very powdery snow, they'd have like a lot of snow on them. And I was planning to obviously do this with like my gel pen, although I wasn't quite sure how I was gonna get all of that snow on them with just a gel pen. And then I remembered that bleed-proof white I got whenever I did my cancer piece, and I hadn't used it since then. And I was like, you know what, it was like $10 for this teeny little jar. I should really use this. And So I just sort of like tested it a little bit on a thumbnail, and I mixed it up too, because I've had things like that, like just like dry up in the jar, and I'd have to get rid of it. And so I'm trying to make sure that I remember to just sort of take it out and stir it up once in a while. So I'll talk on that in a second, but like, I kind of really have a love-hate relationship with the way Amaret's face is drawn. Like, I messed with it a lot, and in one way I was like really proud of it, and in another way I was like, this looks like really weird. I think it's like okayly drawn. Like, the way it's drawn isn't bad, but I think it just sort of doesn't look like Amaret to me. Maybe that was what it is. I've been trying to also do more, like, I've been practicing expressions a lot in my sketchbook, and I don't know if it really like shows yet, but I've been trying to be a little bit more outgoing with it. I used V99 on the tights instead of using black for no really other reason other than just I didn't really want black in the piece. Try to just keep it colorful, and that V99 just very rarely ever gets used, so, and I think it looks really good with the colors here. Okay, so yeah, I'll go back to talking about the bleedproof white, even though I'm not at that point yet. It worked out really well, and I got effects that I really would not have been able to get if I had just used like my gel pen. There just would have been no way I could have done it with my gel pen. I would kind of like just sort of like dab my brush in there, and it's a very like cheap brush. I just sort of save like a lot of cheap brushes for this kind of thing, like either doing like my coffee or my ink or things like this. And I just sort of like I took enough, but enough that like that it wouldn't like I didn't want to glob it. I didn't want like huge sections of just like white, like as if I used whiteout. I wanted there to be texture to it, and this is something I really like about this stuff is like the first couple dots I put on there would be very like opaque, but as I just kind of kept dabbing my brush there, it got a little bit more like transparent, and it had like this very almost like powdery like effect, like the way I was doing it. So I had like some parts that were a little bit more like opaque, and then it kind of like softened out, and I love how soft it turned out because it made it really look like snow, or at least in a stylized manner, but it did look like snow. And I should also point out that that they would have like way more snow on them, technically. Like if it was that kind of snow, like they would just be like covered in it and it'd be everywhere, but I just didn't want to overdo it. You know, I still wanted to be able to see it, so I just sort of chose some areas, and it's on the ground a lot too, to just kind of add texture. And it would have been very easy to just overdo it. Like I just kind of wanted to keep going, but you know, I just had to keep myself from not overdoing it. The sky was awful, because I swear I feel like I refill this marker all the time, but it always feels dry. I used my B000, which is like the lightest blue I have. It's a light, very pure, beautiful blue, and I used it for the sky, and it doesn't look bad here, but it streaked like majorly, and I had a hard time just kind of getting it to fade how I wanted it to. well, that's really about all I have to say. I really do rather quite like how this piece turned out overall. I mean, I think there's probably some things that could be better, but I did want to do something that was a little bit more, I wanted there to be kind of like a story to it, and I've been kind of on a roll with like these winter pieces. I normally don't create nearly this many winter pieces, but it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad, you know, that I've been able to come up with some concepts for winter stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!